All right, so today we're going on a deep dive, and we're going to be talking about Iran and Lebanon.
Okay.
And I think this is going to be, pretty interesting.
Yep.
We've got this article from Vanguard News,
Okay.
and it's all about Iran's reaction to the new Lebanese president.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it uses some, pretty strong language,
Yeah.
talking about defeating Israel. So that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's something that needs to be unpacked a little bit.
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of background, Lebanon just elected this new president,
Yeah, okay.
Joseph Aoun, and this came after a 2-year vacancy.
Oh, wow.
So, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And Iran is, they're pretty excited about this, celebrating it as a major victory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and President Pezeshkian, he had this quote. He said, "Reinforcement of stability and unity will defeat the greed of the Zionist enemy against Lebanese territory." So pretty strong words.
Yeah, he's not really mincing words there.
Yeah.
It seems like they see this as, well, very important.
Yeah.
Like a win for their side.
Totally. Yeah, and I think it reveals a lot about how Iran sees the region.
Right.
This whole idea that Lebanon is this key battleground.
Yeah.
So where do we even go from here? How do they plan to use this new president, to achieve their goals? What kind of leverage do they even have?
Well, I think the best place to start is with Hezbollah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Hezbollah, longtime ally of Iran
Right.
in Lebanon.
Right, exactly. They're incredibly powerful within Lebanon, both politically and, militarily.
Yeah.
And they've been a thorn in Israel's side for decades.
Right.
And, Iran has been supporting them, giving financial aid, weapons, training, all that.
So it sounds like Iran is using Hezbollah as their proxy in Lebanon,
Yeah.
a way to project power and influence in the region.
I think that's definitely a part of it, key part of their strategy. But there's this new wrinkle, right?
Oh.
Because Aoun, this new president, he's pledged to make sure that the Lebanese state has a monopoly on weapons.
Oh, wow. So that sounds like it's going to be a point of tension.
Potentially, yeah.
Because, how can Iran talk about defeating Israel if the Lebanese government is trying to take away their weapons from their main ally?
Right. It's kind of a contradiction.
Yeah.
Aoun, he might be trying to, reduce Iran's influence a bit.
It's like we've got this triangle. You've
Right.
got Iran pushing for a stronger Hezbollah. You've got Aoun maybe trying to rein them in. And then you've got Israel watching all of this super closely. What could even happen here?
Well, I think it really depends on how much Aoun wants to, to push against Hezbollah.
Right.
Iran could try to pressure him to back off.
Okay.
Maybe offer some economic incentives.
Yeah.
Or, they could try and use their political influence.
So it's a real balancing act for Aoun.
Yeah.
Trying to keep both Iran and the people within Lebanon who are, wary of Hezbollah happy.
Right. Because if he pushes too hard against Hezbollah,
Yeah.
things could get unstable.
Yeah.
It could even lead to more conflict with Israel.
But if he gives into Iran's demands, then, he risks becoming a puppet.
Right, exactly. It could, undermine his own authority.
Exactly. And there's also the whole economic aspect, right?
Yes.
Because President Pezeshkian, he specifically mentioned wanting to cooperate more with Lebanon, economically.
Right.
So what do you make of that? Is that just a genuine offer of support, or is that another way to kind of, exert control?
It could be both.
Okay.
On the surface, they're saying they want to help Lebanon's economy,
Right.
but it could also be a way to gain more of a foothold.
Right.
Imagine if they start investing in, infrastructure or energy.
Right.
That would give them a lot of power.
So this whole economic cooperation thing, it's like a soft power play.
Potentially.
Yeah.
They could use it to influence decisions.
Wow, this is a lot more complicated than I initially thought. And we haven't even talked about what defeat even means.
Yeah.
What are they even talking about?
That's a great question. Are we talking about a military victory here? Are we talking about political isolation? Or is it something else entirely?
Yeah.
Something more nuanced.
Well, I guess we're gonna have to dive into that a little bit more next time.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot more to unpack here.
Okay, so we've kind of set the stage, introduced the players, and next time we're gonna really get into what this defeat actually means.
Sounds good.
And what the potential consequences could be.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about that pretty interesting quote from President Pezeshkian about defeating Israel.
Yep.
And it really seems like Iran sees Lebanon as a crucial part of their strategy in the region.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Lebanon's really, right at the center of things.
Yeah.
And when you hear that kind of language, you have to ask, like, what does defeat even mean to them?
Right. Yeah. I mean, are they talking about like a full-blown war?
Yeah.
Or is it, something a little more subtle?
I think it's probably safe to say that, a huge military conflict that's probably not their main goal.
Right.
It's probably something more long-term,
Right.
a way to kind of shift the balance of power.
So how would they even go about doing that?
Well, I think a big part of it is Hezbollah.
Okay, yeah, Hezbollah.
Making sure that they're strong.
Right.
We already know that Iran has been giving them a lot of support,
Yeah.
but that could increase, now with Aoun as president.
But wait, didn't Aoun say that he wants the Lebanese government to be the only one with weapons?
Yeah, he did say that.
So how does that even work?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it could cause some real problems.
Right.
Iran might pressure him,
Okay.
offer him some economic incentives, maybe some political support, try to get him to look the other way.
And if Aoun doesn't agree, then what?
Well, then things could get really messy.
Okay.
I mean, Iran could try to, make him look bad, undermine him,
Right.
maybe even stir up some trouble with their allies in Lebanon.
So they could try to destabilize Lebanon
It's possible, yeah.
so that Hezbollah ends up being even more powerful?
Yeah, but that's a very risky move.
Yeah.
It could, backfire,
Right.
and it could lead to other countries getting involved.
Right, like the U.S. and Israel.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They're watching all of this very carefully. They're not going to just, sit back and do nothing.
Yeah, they both see Iran as a pretty big threat, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what could they do?
Well, they could put more sanctions on Iran,
Okay.
on Hezbollah.
Right.
They could even give military aid to try to counter them. And we know that Israel has, actually taken military action against Hezbollah before.
Yeah. And that's always a worry.
Yeah.
If Israel feels threatened, they might strike first.
Right.
And then, who knows what could happen. It could turn into a much bigger conflict.
So there are a lot of potential trigger points here.
Sure.
It's a tense situation. But I guess the bigger question is, what does Iran actually want? What does a quote defeated Israel actually look like to them?
That's a good question, yeah. I mean, what is their end goal?
Right.
I think they want to see Israel weakened,
Okay.
maybe lose some allies, maybe be condemned by other countries.
So make them look bad on the world stage?
Exactly, yeah. I think they also want to challenge Israel militarily,
Okay.
and that's where Hezbollah comes in.
Right.
If Hezbollah is strong, it keeps Israel on edge.
It's like they're always having to be ready for a fight.
Exactly, yeah. And then ultimately, I think Iran wants Israel to give up some things.
Like what?
Well, maybe some land, maybe change their policies towards Palestinians.
So it's really about power, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
They want to be the main power in the Middle East.
Yeah, that seems to be the goal.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the negative stuff here.
Right.
But is there anything good that could come out of this for Lebanon?
That's an interesting question. I mean, Iran did talk about expanding economic cooperation.
Right. Yeah.
So there's definitely potential there.
Okay.
They could invest money, provide energy, increase trade, all that.
Yeah.
That could really help Lebanon's economy. And it would definitely benefit the people.
But wouldn't that make Lebanon more dependent on Iran?
It's a risk, yeah.
Right.
It's a tough situation.
Yeah.
They need the help, but they don't want to be controlled.
So Aoun has to be really careful.
Oh, yeah. He's got to think very strategically about this. Make sure Lebanon stays independent.
This whole situation, it's like a game of chess, isn't it?
It is. And the stakes are really high.
And the future of Lebanon kind of hangs in the balance.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, so we've really spent the last two parts digging into, this whole situation.
Yeah.
Iran, Lebanon,
Right.
all the history, the politics,
The tension.
The tension, yeah, and it feels like, there's no easy answer here.
No, not at all.
Every path forward has all these potential problems.
Right. It's a very delicate situation.
It
A
is.
lot of things could go wrong.
It is. But I think, we can't just lay out all the problems and then just like end it there.
Right, right. We have to, at least try to think about, like, what are some solutions?
Exactly. Yeah. Like what can actually be done to help Lebanon?
Right, to make things, more stable, more prosperous.
Yeah. How can they move forward?
I think, honestly, the first thing is Lebanon needs to be more united.
Okay. Yeah. Internal cohesion.
Yes, exactly. When a country is divided, it's just, it's easier for outside forces to take advantage.
Right. And we know like Iran is trying to exert their influence.
Exactly.
But how do you even begin to fix those divisions? I mean, there's so much like distrust.
Oh, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time. It takes leadership.
Okay.
I mean, someone like Eo needs to be strong.
Okay.
He needs to, put the country first.
Right, above all the different factions.
Exactly. And all sides need to be willing to, talk to compromise.
So it's a lot of internal work.
Yes, definitely. But they can't do it on their own.
Okay, so they need like outside help.
Yes, they need the international community to step up.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Well, they need financial support, of course.
Right, to help rebuild their economy, to strengthen their institutions.
Exactly, yeah. Things like debt relief,
Okay.
investments, aid,
And also like political support too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like everyone needs to be on the same page, like saying to Iran, hey, back off.
Right, yeah, sending a clear message that, meddling won't be tolerated.
Okay.
And then there's, the big question of Hezbollah.
Right, their military power.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that the best approach is probably a gradual disarmament.
Okay.
But it can't be, forced or rushed.
Right.
It has to be done in a way that makes them feel safe.
Okay.
You have to understand they see themselves as protectors.
Right, against Israel.
Exactly. So any plan has to address that, make sure they know they're still going to be secure.
So it sounds like this is going to take a lot of diplomacy.
Oh, a lot.
Right.
A lot of trust. And it's hard to say if that's even possible right now.
Yeah, it does seem like a really big challenge.
It is.
We've talked about, Iran, we've talked about Lebanon, the region. But what about the US?
Yeah, what role should they play?
Right, like what should they do?
Well, they have a lot of influence.
Yeah.
But they have to be smart about how they use it.
Right.
Trying to force things, it usually just makes things worse.
So like a more behind-the-scenes approach.
Yeah, encouraging dialogue, cooperation,
Right.
They can also use their influence to pressure Iran.
Right, to stop doing things that are destabilizing
Right.
Lebanon
Exactly.
and Israel. I mean, they're not just going to stand by and watch Iran, gain power right next door.
Right, they have to protect themselves, but they also need to be careful.
Okay.
If they overreact, it could make everything worse.
So everyone has to be really careful here.
Yes, it's a very, very delicate situation.
It is. But, before we go, I want to bring it back to our listener for a second.
Sure.
Like, why should you even care about what's going on in Lebanon?
That's a fair question. I think the main reason is, what happens in one place, it affects everyone,
Right.
especially in a region like that.
Yeah, it's a very volatile region.
Yes.
And any conflict could, spread.
Right, and that could lead to all sorts of problems.
Yeah, like refugee crises,
Yeah,
disruptions to trade,
right.
maybe even terrorism.
It's a globalized world, so everything's connected.
It is.
And, beyond that, there's also just the human side of things.
Right, yeah, like these are real people whose lives are affected.
Exactly. The people of Lebanon deserve peace. They deserve a chance to rebuild.
Yeah, they've been through a lot.
They have.
So what's the takeaway here?
I think it's that, the situation is complicated. There's no easy fix, but we all have a role to play in trying to make things better.
Right, like staying informed, supporting efforts for peace, and holding those in power accountable.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Iran and Lebanon.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Yeah, it was a great discussion, and, we hope you learned something. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can make things.